Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 7 o'clock in the morning, March 14th, Sunday, March 14th, and this is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention. It's up to us, and I'm happy to be here. We're on for 30 minutes live. It's a live internet streaming blogtalkradio.com show, and, I do have a guest call-in number, but I don't take calls anymore because most people that were calling in were just calling in on, for prank calls and stuff. So I just, I don't have time for that kind of stuff. So if you want to be on the show, make sure you get a hold of me on, you can just send me a message here. You can sit in the chat room, let me know. Or you can send me a message by email ahead of time if you'd like to come on the show, because I welcome everybody to my show. And yeah, today we finished up with drug abuse, and we could keep going on and on with that, but I'm going to go ahead and end it where we ended it last Sunday. We were talking about co-occurring problems with drug abuse, and then things like mental issues. Maybe they're if a person's suffering with PTSD or maybe personal, like that, what do they call that, borderline personality disorder and things like that, and then they're using drugs at the same time. They're called like a co-occurring disorder, and you have to treat both sides of it. You have to treat the mental illness as well as the drug abuse. So I really thought that article was awesome, and I think that that helpguide.org is a great website, and they really try to bring out some great information to people, and I highly recommend that website, www.helpguide.org. And so we're finished with that, and I just thought we'd go on with Survivor to Thriver, because I've been working on Survivor to Thriver for a few weeks now, and so I figure, we may as well continue on that today and as well next week in the evenings and see how far we can get. And I'm not sure if we're going to read the whole thing, and there's 115 pages of the Survivor to Thriver manual, and you can find this Survivor to Thriver manual at www.ascasupport.org, and it's a download. It's free. You can just download it. Anybody can use it. There's the first chapter is 34 pages long. It's all devoted to safety first, about being safe in our healing process. So, this show is not professional. I'm not a professional counselor. I don't have any professional certificates in counseling or therapy. It's not meant to replace, professional help. And I just make sure I tell everybody that I'm just a survivor who is interested in bringing information to people as I find it's very helpful for me to look at it. So I like to bring information to other people, and as well as issues surrounding child abuse and human rights abuses. So that's what this show is all about. And I'd like to bring information out to the public, and I think not enough people. The world just doesn't like talking about abuse, but because that means the perpetrators have to do something about it. They either have to stop doing it, or they can keep it silenced, right? So to me, it just seems like there's not enough people talking about abuse. The survivors don't talk about it because it's so painful, and usually most people don't want to hear about it. I know that's what we're going to cover today. Social alienation is in the Survivor to Thriver workbook, so we'll get right on with that. But, survivors of child abuse of any kind generally don't like talking about it because most people don't like hearing about it, and it's hard to talk about because I know, just in the last 3 or 4 years, I've actually come a long way in my healing process, especially the last 3 years. But I used to talk about it before, and I'd usually end up losing my friends over it because people don't want to hear about it, and if they hear about it too much, then they tend to sort of, I don't know, I think maybe it bothers them and they can't handle it, so they just kind of pushed me away. So, and some of them I actually pushed away myself because I thought, I don't need a friend in my life who doesn't have compassion in their heart and who doesn't have empathy and who can't be my friend. Forget it then, because I need good people in my life, I didn't start out with good people in my life except for my friends, but in my family, nobody was looking out for anybody in that family, not just me, but just, nobody was looking out for anybody. So, I decided that as an adult, I can choose my friends, and I choose my friends very carefully because I don't allow people to abuse me in my adult life, period. I just absolutely will take no abuse from anybody because it's my human right to live a life of abuse-free. I mean, I don't mind a little bit of confrontation and someone who has some suggestions for me, or if I'm doing something wrong, can tell me, in a positive, constructive way. that they want to talk to me about whatever, but I don't allow people to abuse me, whether it's verbal, physical, I don't care, emotional, none of, I decided as an adult that it's my choice, and that I suffered enough as a child in a home that was full of all kinds of abuse, and I just think that as adults, when we grow up in that situation, we have to make the decision of how we're going to let people treat us, and also how we're going to treat other people. I also had to work on my abusive behaviors towards people that, if something came up that I didn't like, I would revert back to the way that I was brought up and the way I was taught to handle things, and that was to be in their face and scream at them and yell and shout and possibly get a little bit violent. So, I had to learn how to work on myself. I had to fix myself too. I couldn't just expect other people not to abuse me in any way and then go ahead and act the way that I was acting. So, it took some time to work through it. But I like this Survivor to Thriver workbook, and you can find it www.ascasupport.org. So we'll continue on with that. And so listen at your own discretion, please. You know where you're at in your healing, and you know what's good for you to listen to. So if the show is going to bother you or any abuse topics at all bother you, please turn the show off because you won't be hurting my feelings. And the young people under the age of 18, or especially young people, right, really young children, make sure you have someone to listen to this with you, because I'm a promoter and a fighter for child rights, and I promote online safety. And so I think your parents, or I know so often we don't have parents who care. Believe me, I know, because I had two that actually didn't care much about what I was doing. So I know that there's parents out there who don't care. So, if you have a teacher, counselor, a mentor, a coach, someone who can listen to it with you, just to make sure that it's okay for you to listen to this. And, it's just important because I do care. And I think there's too many opportunities for children to end up in the hands of all kinds of sexual predators and different things like that. So I'm a fighter for child rights, and so I want people to make sure they're in a safe place when they're listening to this, right? So that's all, and we'll continue on here. This is on page 58 of the Survivor to Thriver workbook, Social Alienation. And it says here, I'm just going to read right from the page, because of their abuse experiences, most adult survivors feel stigmatized and experience people as dangerous and not to be trusted. Attending parties or other social gatherings can evoke anxiety, insecurities, and concerns over not being good enough. Fear of rejection is also a common concern for survivors, and because they were usually harmed by adults whom they trusted, survivors tend to carry their fear of being harmed by others into the present. And I know that's so true in my case. I didn't trust anybody. And as a kid, I really didn't trust very many. I didn't trust very many people. Some of my friends' parents I thought were pretty cool, and there was some teachers and stuff that I really liked. But as far as just a real trust, I didn't really trust anybody. And even like now, I've had to learn how to trust people over the years, because I thought, I want to be trusted. I want people to trust me. And I thought, so if I want people to trust me, then I'm going to have to learn how to trust them. And so it was hard, because really I would walk down the street and I would think, not one person out here is my friend. They are all my enemies. And so if I meet somebody on the street, they're not my friend. Because I had so many, I had almost, I counted them up, and it was 5 times that someone had actually, different people, different men had tried to walk off with me when I was young. And it scared me. And I grew up in an abusive home, and then to have that guy, was out on the streets quite a bit and running around, and where I shouldn't have been a lot of times. And so I'd end up in these situations like where people could have actually walked off with me, and I got saved every time, by people who were in the area. Just awesome. I think my guardian angel was looking out for me. So that's all I can say. I didn't trust anybody, and I kind of, I did that as for self-preservation, you know what I mean? So it's so hard. It really is. It's hard to learn how to trust people. And I even now, there's people I trusted that I actually thought I could trust. And then, 12, 13, 14 years later, find out that I can't trust them. And so, the fear of rejection, like it all kind of comes back, because I'm like, well, man, who can you trust? But, I believe that I'm willing to put myself out there and believe that there are some good people in this world. And I've run into quite a few of them, just recently, especially. They don't have anything, they're not my family, right? These are people that could just tell me just to buzz off. But instead of that, they opened up their hearts, they opened up their lives and their They opened up their hand of friendship to me, and that's amazing to me because my own family won't even do that. And so, and friends, like close friends that I had for 12, 14 years just blew me off, you know what I mean? And here I have these other people who are just reaching out to me and allowing me to, in their lives, you know what I mean? And it makes such a huge difference in my life. And so that's all I can say. I mean, I'm willing to learn to trust and stuff, and I'm willing to keep trusting, and as I want people to trust me, so as a person, you know what I mean? So it is hard. It's very hard on people. I'll keep reading here. Many survivors end up living in isolation because it feels safer and less threatening to them. The role of the recluse, employed during childhood to avoid the abuse, becomes in adult life a means of protecting oneself against hurt. Sometimes the threat is real, other times it is imagined. When survivors do venture out into the world and attempt to establish contact with others, they may be tremendously sensitive about how they are treated. Survivors may experience joking or teasing, intended as lighthearted banter appropriate to the social situation, as critical or hostile and at their expense. And, I know that can happen for sure. And, it's hard because we're just trying to keep this wall of protection around us, so we go out and we make friends and whatnot, and then, a situation comes up, a social situation comes up, and there's all of a sudden there's just normal average people having fun and joking around, and it could be perceived by us as being, more abuse, you know what I mean? So it is very hard, it really is. Much of survivors' difficulties in social situations have to do with never having learned how to communicate. Others may have ignored or invalidated survivors' childhood opinions and perceptions and left them wondering how to relate to people. If you expect rejection, criticism, and humiliation, it is hard to learn to speak with conviction, listen with interest, and telegraph your receptivity to others via body language and nonverbal cues. And I know I don't have a problem with that, but I think it's because I had the family that kind of stepped in there. I had good friends when I was growing up. I had some really awesome friends that were on my street, who lived on my block, and they were my best friends. So although all this horrible stuff was going on in my home, I would hang out a lot at their houses, and I got to watch their parents interact and see what normal families would do, right? And it did help. I know that helped a lot. And so I could carry on normal conversations with people. It was only in the home that I had to be careful what I said, because it didn't really matter what I said at home. My mom, whether I said, if I didn't say anything at all, as long as if I had a look on my face that my mom didn't like, then it could put me at risk of a beating or, some verbal abuse, right? Mostly she would just lash out with a beating of some kind, So she didn't like, I think she used that as her excuse, if it was that look, take that look off your face, right? And I didn't even know what look it was. So then the next day or, 2 weeks later, I'd be worried about what look I had on my face, because I was like, oh, is it the right look, because that just was her way. It was all, that means she, at any given time, she could go ahead and abuse me whenever she wanted to, just because of the look on my face. So I had to be really careful what I said around the house, and a lot of times I had a smart mouth because I grew up listening to people cuss and curse me, and curse each other, right? So sometimes I would say things that I was just learned from other people, from my family, right? So I was just kind of pitching in on the conversation, and I had to really watch that because, I was, nobody really wanted to hear what I had to say, and usually when I had something to say, I usually end up paying for it. So I didn't say a whole lot around the house, and I didn't talk to too many people within the home. Sometimes I would talk to my brothers out in the yard and stuff like that, especially if they were down and feeling kind of depressed and stuff. I'd go out there and sit and talk with them, or in their rooms, I tried to be a bit of a support even as a young girl, right? And but my friends' parents, I got to see a lot of normal behavior at their houses. That helped out a lot because my mom didn't control me to the point where I wasn't allowed to leave. Actually, she wanted me out of the house, so she was happy when I was gone, right? I was happy when I was gone because it just was one less opportunity for abuse, So I used to be at friends' house quite a bit, and different friends, and learned a lot from those people, and grew up, they talked to me like a normal person, and I got to talk to them like a normal person. So it did make a huge difference. I know not every child gets that opportunity who's abused. They grow up abused, and they don't have the parents control them to the point where they're not even allowed to leave the house. My mom didn't care. She didn't mind smacking me around and sending me out the door, right? Because she said, I don't care, bring them on. What are they going to say? I'll discipline my child however I want. So she didn't mind, and she didn't care if anybody knew what was going on really in the home. She was mostly wanting sympathy for herself, and so a lot of times she would mention stuff that was going on in the home to neighbors and stuff because she was looking for help, and she should have got the proper help. That's the thing. I always felt really bad for my mom because she was miserable her whole entire life. She was abused as a child and carried that on and never got any help with it, and then ended up in a very unsatisfying marriage with a man who I just still today can't figure out what's the matter with him. You know what I mean? He's not capable of empathy. He doesn't have any. It's like he only thinks about himself. He's very self-centered and very almost unhuman, you know what I mean? In a way, to me. It's like he wants to be part of the world, but he can't. And so it's so strange. Like he wanted to be part of the family, but he couldn't, and he kept on his abusive behavior for years and years, drove my mom crazy, right? So my mom actually went kind of crazy, and it's a good thing she had some neighbors around her. She might have actually really gone crazy, but she had some neighbor friends who would try to help her out too, right? But she didn't reach out and get any help, so of course it just continued on. And that's what I think we all need to do, is make sure that we reach out and get help. Find a counselor, find a therapist, and if you or group support. Even an online group support is very helpful. I know I belong to a few of those groups, and it's great to have people to talk to in your life that can help you get through this stuff. Right? I know myself that was the case for me, because I stopped talking to people about it because I kept losing all my friends, and I thought, well, man, if I'm going to lose all my friends, forget it. And I didn't have very many friends left. You know what I mean? I thought, man, it's a drag. So it's good to have somebody to talk to who actually knows where you're coming from and understands what's going on in your life. As a survivor of childhood abuse of any kind, right? Doesn't matter what kind. It's all the same. It all hurts really bad, and it all leaves its own scars. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to get along in this world without some help, So my mom was the same way. She was abused as a child. She had so many childhood aches and hurts from watching her family being torn apart by her mother. It's horrible, and so she just passed it on down to us because her heart grew into hatred. See, and that's what was happening to me. She was pushing me to hate life and pushing me into hating myself and the family and everything, right? Because she was just doing what her mother was doing, right, to her. So she just passed it right on down to me. And so I just decided that I wasn't going to continue on in that. And I thought, no, I want to have a good life. You know what I mean? I can't see why people should have to suffer their whole entire lives. You know what I mean? That's what I watched my parents do, and that's what I thought. I can't allow myself to do that, right? So important that we get help. So they ask some questions here, and they say, it says question number 81, do you often feel uncomfortable in groups of people? Question 82, and we're supposed to answer these. This is a workbook, right, and it's journal questions, and we can answer these questions while we're going through the workbook, right, and then take a look at them as we work through the workbook, right? So that's what it's all about. Question 82, do you feel tongue-tied, nervous, or self-conscious? And this is like in a social setting, right? Question 83, do you try to avoid social situations? Question 84, do you feel that others may not accept you? Question 85, do you feel different than, in the sense of worse than other people? Question 86, do you often feel misunderstood, blamed, or ignored by other people? And question 87, do you either avoid conflict or attract it seemingly endlessly? Question 88, do you assume a typical role that is not really you in social situations? Question 89, do you lack trust in your judgment of social expectations? And question 90, do you feel that your experience of life is somehow not right or not as good as others? And I know, like, my situation, looking back, I can get along quite well in a social situation because I like to have fun and I like to laugh. And, even in our home we used to laugh. I mean, it wasn't just all doom and gloom. It was just like a war. You just never knew when the battle was coming, and that was the main issue. We did have some good times, and it's not like we had some good times all the time. People like to make that out like, oh, your family was great, you had good times, what, maybe once a year? What are we talking, twice a month? Or, it was pretty bad for many years. It wasn't all that fun. But the thing is when people would come over, of course my mom was happy, so out would come the cookies and the cake, and out would come the coffee, and how are you? In the meantime, I'm in the back room crying because I just got the crap beat out of me. So this is the thing, right? People don't, people just don't have a clue, right? So, of course we had some good times, and, I mean, it's not like it was just all 365 days a year of bad stuff, right? This went on for years and years and years, over a period of many, many years, So, I mean, a lot of kids, might be abused for a year or two and then out of the situation and then maybe even into a worse situation. And some abused for maybe 6 months and then on into a better situation, right? But I lived in a home that was full of abuse from the time I was born until the time I actually moved up here to Canada, which was 29 years later, because I was still taking emotional abuse off my mother. So, and physical abuse up until I was about 16, and she was still trying to beat me up when I was 17, which, was just ridiculous. So, this is the sort of thing that can happen, right? She looked at me as an object, as if something that she had every right to mistreat if she wanted to. And so that's the problem, right? When people look at their children as objects, it's not very good, right? Because they don't have any respect for them. My dad even today doesn't have any respect for his children and doesn't care, that his 2 sons are in a grave because of drug abuse and drug overdose. I think he feels like it's not his fault and he had nothing to do with it. But I know because I was there and I saw what was happening. I saw the treatment that they took as children, and were treated as young adults, like they're in their teen years, especially. I saw that. And I tell you what, it wasn't good. And he was not a good father figure to them, you know what I mean? He was just beating them and berating them, calling them names and really hurting them, their whole core. All they wanted to do was have a father that loved them and would take them out and hang out with them, right? But he caused them to, they ended up turning to drugs like I did, right, when I was young, because they couldn't cope, right? So instead of getting them help, all it did was get them beat, and treated like crap. And that's the whole thing. It's not funny. And now they're dead, right? And I could have headed the same way. So that's the thing. It's hard for people, And so that's why we just have to keep reaching out. But I didn't have too many problems in a social setting. I love to have a good time. And most of my siblings, actually all of them that are still living right now, which is two other ones, they're actually quite well, handle themselves great in a social situation. We like to have fun and laugh and have fun, and you know what I mean. So it's not like, but I think some other people, it depends on the type of the type of situation. If you were controlled 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for years, and you were never allowed to experience any other outside influences, which we were. My parents didn't keep us under lock and key at the house, right? So I think that's a big issue, and I think a lot of people have suffered through that, where they could not be out with other people, learning how to cope and talk to people. So then when they do come in contact with people, as an adult even, they have a hard time talking and feeling understood and feeling maybe that somebody, if they say anything, it's going to be the wrong thing, and they don't trust their judgment and, in a social situation, right, because they just haven't had enough experience in it. Whereas I spent a lot of time away from my house because it was dangerous to be at the house. So, when I did go home, that's the whole issue. When I did go home, it generally was violent. It's not like, I was pretty much away from the house just because of that. And then when I did go home, it would just be more violence, you know what I mean? So I loved being away from the house, right? I didn't like being at home. But I didn't want to be removed from the home because my mom, she never threatened to throw out my brothers. I thought about that, last night actually, talking to someone. She never threatened to throw out my brothers. She never threatened to throw out my sister, and yet she wanted to throw me out. And I thought, I haven't even done a quarter of what my brothers have done. They were out hurting people and, getting thrown in jail and prison and stuff and doing drugs. And my sister was kind of an angel, so I can imagine, my mom really loved her, and so of course she wasn't going to throw her out. And so I thought, why is she going to throw me out? That hurt me to my very core, because when she was telling me that, I was about 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. And I thought, no way, you're not throwing me out, because she did not want me. She literally, I was a rape child, born out of a marital rape, and she had it, she held that against me, totally she did. And so she told me to my face, right? She told me enough times that, it's pretty obvious that was the issue. So she wanted me out of the house, and I thought, no way, you didn't throw any of the other ones out, so I'm staying. I was determined that I was not going to be a throwaway child, you know what I mean? Now I'm kind of kicking myself, thinking, why didn't you just let her, I should have just done it and got it over with. I would have been able to move on a lot sooner. That's the whole issue. I mean, who knows? But because we know that when children are removed from their homes, a lot of times they go right into another abusive situation. So it's really bad. That's why it's so important that we we have to change this thing. You know what I mean? It has to change. And I know that people say, well, how would we change it? Well, first of all, people are going to have to stop thinking about themselves so much and start thinking about how can we make this happen. You know, take a few minutes to look around what's going on in your community. That's what I'm doing. And find out who's doing what and what's working, and then support it. You know, and find out who's actually making a difference on this earth and support it. Because that's the whole issue. There's a lot of groups out there that are not doing anything, and they're getting a lot of support. And then there's other groups who are really making a difference, and they're having a hard time because they don't have any support. So find out in your community what's actually working. That's what I think we should do. And then take it from there, because there's certain things work and certain things don't. It's not an insult. It's just the way it works. So I think that's important. And just to know and understand and be aware of the signs and symptoms of abuse is really important. Even within your own family, you know, you could have a small child in your own family, like, you know, a grandchild or a nephew or a niece, you know, that you know, if you're not looking for the signs of abuse, even in our own families, that can happen, right? They can be being abused, and you right under your nose, and then it wouldn't really be your fault. The thing is you could save a child's life, and you could really prevent this kind of thing from happening if you do report it. And that's the important thing, is to report it. You have to do the right thing for these children, right? You know, we have one chance to save a child's life. So if you think or suspect or even have the smallest inkling of an idea that a child is being abused, you have to do the right thing and make the phone call, because it's the only thing to do. That's all I'm saying. We have to, not just you. I mean, we have to, right? So important, right? Because we can save a child's life. Right now, you know, in the paper, we'll see today, I mean, I'm sure today in the headlines somewhere, some child will die at the hands of a parent, probably 4 or 5 across the country. And that doesn't include the amount that are around the world that are just not reported, that are just being killed, right? Horrible. And so the thing is if they're not killed, there's going to be however many unreported cases of child abuse today. Parents are going to lose control, and they're going to abuse their children, or they're going to use their children as a control object to get back at the other partner. And so the whole thing is this is going on, and it's not statistics. This is not just numbers. These are children, like I was a child. These are kids who need help, you know what I mean? So we have to be on the lookout for them. And, you know, I just think it's just wrong for society to sit and look at what's going on in the paper, cry the blues about it. Oh, isn't that so sad? Look at that. That's terrible. And then, oh, I don't have time to get involved. Oh, I have to go and get my hair done, and I have to wash my car. And, oh, but look at that. Oh, that's terrible what those parents did. How dare those parents do that? I hear this all the time. And it's like, well, what are you going to do about it then? You know what I mean? That's what happened to me. I was sitting on the couch watching a TV program, and then all of a sudden I was upset at what I had seen, because it was about it was about an assault on a woman by her husband, and her face had been completely smashed in. And it was real. It was a live video footage that they actually had brought this video out to the public secretly, right? So it was undercover. And the thing is I was upset and I was crying about it, and I thought, you know, why am I sitting here crying about it? Why am I not getting off the couch and doing something about this? I don't like what I see in the world. I don't like what happened to me. I don't like what happened to my family. I don't like what happened to my brothers and sisters, right? I don't like the fact that we were treated like crap our whole entire lives. And, you know, the thing is, I thought, why am I still sitting here and not doing anything? I know there's children out there, and I knew this the whole time, and that's what made me really mad, is I knew there was kids suffering out there. And here yet I was willing to not be a voice for them. And so I thought, you know, 3 years ago, that's just stopping right now. I'm going to be a voice for the children that cannot speak up for themselves, and get out there and start finding out what's going on and talking to people and making a difference in this world. And that's what we have to do, right? So that's all. I mean, I think if everybody did that, this world would be a better place. That's all. So I hope you have a great day, everybody. We have about a minute left. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them. Make sure you go to their website. You can get all kinds of great information on there about everything regarding child abuse prevention, awareness, how to report it, signs and symptoms, online safety, survivor issues and stuff like that. You can get a free download, a child abuse handbook PDF download on their website. It's free, and you can just download that right to your own computer, and I have one, and it's great. And so that's www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. www.workbook.com, and I highly recommend that website. It's very healing. I love that website. And so, yeah, everybody, just make sure you take care of yourselves. Make sure you get some help. If you're really suffering and you just need some help, don't suffer in silence. I did for years, and it's wrong and it's sad, and it never should have happened. I mean, I had suffered as a child for so long, and then suffered as an adult for so long because I didn't reach out. So make sure you reach out and get some help. Keep that hope alive and take care of yourselves. I'll be back on tonight, Mount Bethel Christian Worship and Fellowship Bible Study. So we'll be talking to you later. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.